GE, and my project was called eSpec Tracker, which is a documentation subscription tool. Just a quick brief history about the e-business solutions department, which is where I worked at GE. We're working on mostly online sales and ordering, a lot of auctions and new communication tools, which mine was a communication tool. Basically, where I worked at, we were dealing with not external customers, but internal customers. We were looking to help the engineering organization improve its communication. And we also identify cost out opportunities as different and new projects to save the company money. I've actually been at GE for 2 years, and I did phase 1 of this project, and it took a lot longer than phase 2. Just in order to make you help you understand phase 2 and what I did, just a quick overview of phase 1. It's a subscription tool that allows engineers to subscribe to documents that are pertinent to their work. We have a drawing retrieval system that actually links to all drawings in a database, a control card database. And my tool allows engineers to go in and subscribe to documents, a list of documents related to the requisition or purchase order that they're working on. And there's actually an option that they can receive emails when these documents have either been released for the first time or been updated. That way the engineers are always working from the most current document. And the phase 1 was completed at the end of summer, and then coming into fall we started phase 2. And phase 2, these are just some of the functionalities that we implemented in phase 2. We had to add maintenance instructions to it, which were not in the control card database, which is on the VAX. So they're actually, they didn't have any sort of data scheme whatsoever. They were just all thrown into a server, a folder on a server. So I'll go over on how we implemented and integrated those two systems. Also, we had to add what they called a personal, that should say project functionality. But what it is it's just a folder that instead of relating all documents to a PO or FAR, there were other departments like our off-highway vehicles that really didn't follow the FAR or the PO that like normal projects do. So this allowed the engineers to go in and subscribe to the documents based on whatever they were working on. And this copy and send functionality, it was sort of like an email, but it didn't actually go to your email. What it did was if you were a project leader at GE and you went in and created this folder with all of these documents in it, and you wanted all of your team to be subscribed to these documents because they were pertinent to work that you were doing on a locomotive, it would allow you to create a folder with documents inside of it, and then when you go in and hit copy and send, you select what users you want to send it to, and automatically those users were subscribed to those documents. It sent that folder to their main screen, and I'll show you that too. And it was really simple. At first when they gave me that functionality, I looked at it and was kind of baffled, but it was pretty much just setting up the database to accommodate that. Again, this is the same thing. Phase 2, they added this removed. So we had to notify the users when a document had been removed from Spec Tracker, because when the POs or FARs were closed, the documents were removed. These were some of our benefits that my tool gave the engineering organization. It eliminated rework by giving the engineers the most up-to-date status on their documents. The big problem that was identified by John Krenicki and a lot of the other people at GE was that engineers weren't being notified when specs changed, and they'd follow the old specs, and then when the locomotive would go to a different building or somebody else would go to work on it, they would have to go back and rework parts because the previous team didn't follow the newest specs. It's also increased communication and decreased time spent trying to communicate changes. This tool, you no longer have to know who's affected by the changes you make when the drafters make the changes to the documents. That's automatically emailed. If it's up to the user now, you know what documents are pertinent to you, so you go in and subscribe to them. And it was a big productivity benefit. It was recognized to save 2,000 hours in the first quarter. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the overheads. Do you have that thing?
Sure.
This is basically the architecture that we used. We had the web server, the Oracle database, and it was an intranet application. Down here, the database schema. We used a lot of lookup tables because there was a specific set of documents assigned for all the, like anybody could subscribe to, but you had to keep track of user-specific, who was subscribed to which documents and which documents related to which projects. So we used a lot of lookup tables, but our lookup tables were getting really large, so we actually had to go through and index all of our tables, which is, I didn't know what indexing was until the internship, but it's like a phone book in the back, and it uses just like the first name or the first field or whatever your key element is. The ones in the blue were added for phase 2 to accommodate the personal project folders. You can see that we just created the project ID, and then the project ID is linked into this lookup table, and it refers back to the user ID. The subscription ID is actually the user, and based on project, we had document code ID, and we have document review status because based on the project, if we had when they came to our homepage, they'll see there's an icon that actually is blinking. It doesn't blink, but it's there red at you, and it stays red until you go and review those changes. That way you know that you've reviewed those changes. So we used a lot of the different, there were a lot of status fields and a lot of ID fields to make everything work in this. So it's just a and this is actually what I used to present the integration to my team for SpecTracker and eManuals. It was actually given, the idea was given to me by one of the engineers, but he didn't think that it could happen, and I guess it had been tossed around for 2 years about doing this, but nobody really took the initiative to take it through our tollgate steps at GE. So this up here is the current process. It's a parallel process. eManuals was an actual SQL database, and it was just a simple online ASP application, and it had all of its documents in the toaster in the directory, file directory. And SpecTracker, when I created it, it was created out of all JSPs and an Oracle backend. And I did not do any of the programming myself. I was actually the lead analyst on the project. I had 2 developers working for me, a DBA, and I worked with my manager, but he put me as the lead analyst. So I did all of the scheduling, the database schemas, the layouts, screen layouts, the system logic, put everything together, figured out how this system was going to work, because we were really integrating with like 3 or 4 different systems. And one thing that I really learned was communication skills in this internship, because one of my developers was actually in India, and my other developer was sitting down the hall from me. Well, there's an 8-hour difference between US time and Indian time, so we always had to meet at like 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning or 5 in the morning. There was times we would be there at 3 in the morning just to coordinate our efforts, because tax purposes and other reasons, they didn't want to bring our Indian developer to the United States. So we had to follow lots of task lists, lots of emailing. He'd create the packages and the Oracle packages and the JSPs, send them to me, and I would test them. We had very, very strict test plans. They were very down to the detail, but I'll go over some of that later. But eventually what we did was SpecTracker we have our own Oracle database, and what we did was we modified the eManual system that was an ASP to automatically create these control card entries into the database behind the scenes. So people using the eManuals application, they didn't want them to have to press any more buttons or do any more clicking to get their documents where they needed to go.